As government, industry, and individuals push for environmentally friendly solutions, some people are finding that a greener earth can translate into a greener bottom line. Today on Special Edition TV, finding the balance between profitability and environmental stewardship.
Hello, I'm Ileana Bravo. According to its latest report, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency states that greenhouse gases have increased 14.7% over the past 16 years. Now, many scientists believe this increase helps to facilitate global warming. However, as the carbon market takes hold, the EPA states that emissions from some of these harmful gases have started to trend downward. Joining us now from New York to discuss this topic is Dr. Scott Subler, President of Environmental Credit Corp. Welcome, Dr. Subler.
Hi, Ileana.
We've been hearing so much about greenhouse gases and how carbon credits are helping to offset them. Now, could you explain how all of this works?
Sure. When we think about greenhouse gases, we typically think about carbon dioxide coming out of smokestacks from power companies or large manufacturers. But there are actually a number of different greenhouse gases, and these are gases that absorb heat from the sun and trap it in the atmosphere. So the increased concentration of greenhouse gases can lead to all sorts of changes in the way our climate systems work globally. The carbon market is a function of policy tools that have been developed recently internationally and nationally to regulate greenhouse gases. And typically the carbon market comes out of the type of regulation called cap and trade. And in cap and trade, what happens is the large emitters, power companies, manufacturers, and other companies that produce a lot of greenhouse gases, they're limited in the number of greenhouse gases that they can produce.
Let's back up a little, Dr. Subler. How exactly, what are the greenhouse gases? In other words, why are they harmful to the environment, so that we can sort of put that into a nutshell?
The greenhouse gases, carbon dioxide is the most important greenhouse gas. There's also methane, which is produced through agriculture, comes from landfills, comes from abandoned coal mines, and that's actually 21 times more powerful than carbon dioxide at trapping heat in the atmosphere. And there's nitrous oxide, which comes from the use of nitrogen fertilizers in agriculture. And even the things, common refrigerants in air conditioners and refrigerators are very, very powerful greenhouse gases. And the potency of a greenhouse gas is a function of how much heat it actually traps and absorbs in the atmosphere.
Mm-hmm. Can the carbon credits be sold? How are they invested?
There's basically two markets right now for carbon credits. One is within these frameworks, and the carbon credits are used for compliance with the regulations. And they're traded on registries within these different frameworks. In the United States, the Chicago Climate Exchange is sort of the biggest framework right now. The other market is the voluntary market, where corporations or individuals voluntarily choose to offset their own emissions or their company's emissions, and so they'll buy carbon credits from projects that reduce emissions.
And so how does the U.S. market compare right now to the global market?
The U.S. market is coming on strong right now, and in fact, the U.S. market at the national level actually represents the largest market globally if you look at the baseline of emissions, or the baseline of emissions for entities that have made a legally binding commitment.
We wanted to take a closer look, so we sent Steve Greenberg to upstate New York. Let's take a look.
Here in the pristine Finger Lakes region of central New York State, one of the driving economic forces is agriculture. Its dairy farms produce some of the sweetest milk products anywhere. But that's not all that's produced on a dairy farm. Managing that manure has traditionally been a burden that the farm has had to make the best of.
Historically, farms have used the manure generated on that farm for fertilizing the cropland so that they can grow crops to feed back to the cows. It's probably one of the first recycling endeavors ever utilized.
But before manure can be used on the crops, it must first be separated. The solids go through a multi-step process and are then used for bedding or sold locally as compost.
The liquid portion is then kept on the farm. We use the nutrients that are contained in the liquid portion for crop fertilization on the farm. So we have to store the liquids someplace. And the most popular way of storing the liquids is to dig a hole in the ground and make sure that it's impermeable one way or the other. And then you can put the liquids in that earthen storage until the proper time to apply those liquids to the cropland. One of the challenges is you have rainfall. As soon as that rainfall hits the manure surface, it's considered manure. Now we have to treat it as such. It's no longer rainfall. So it was adding to our total volume. Every day of the year there would be an odor coming off of this lagoon going towards somebody that lives nearby and you know, offending neighbors and that sort of thing.
And that odor is not only offensive, it means the manure is decaying. And decaying manure produces biogas. That biogas, or off-gas, is partially composed of methane. And methane is 21 times more potent a greenhouse gas than CO2, carbon dioxide. In order to help mitigate the effects of the methane on farms and to help farmers generate carbon credits, Environmental Credit Corp has instituted an innovative program that captures the methane produced in these large lagoons and then either burns it off in a flare or puts it to constructive use. The program is simply installing a very tough, virtually rip-proof cover over the lagoon. The cover prevents rainwater from infiltrating the manure lagoon. It also helps to collect the rainwater, which is then reclaimed in parts of the country where rainfall is limited. But the main advantage of the cover is that it contains and collects the methane gas produced by the manure. This eliminates the odor problems, and because the energy from the methane is harnessed in a flare or put to some other meaningful use, it has other environmental benefits. As the flare burns off the methane, it produces carbon dioxide. It also becomes a quantifiable environmental savings, which produces carbon credits for the farmer. Another advantage to the program is that Environmental Credit Corp pays for all of the setup costs, so there's no cost to the farmer.
The way ECC structured this program, my economic risk is not there at all. Economic benefit is there, and in fact, in terms of I have less liquids to deal with on an annual basis, and I have zero odor to deal with. ECC creating a more environmentally responsible storage facility that fits our program here on this farm, and it fits our neighborhood, and the people like it that are around us now. They're not offended by our manure storage. And the best part is we didn't have to invest a penny in doing it. And so there really isn't a way to look at this on a negative standpoint. I think it's a win-win for everybody involved.
I'm Steve Greenberg, reporting.
It's a very interesting program. Now, Dr. Subler, beyond the agriculture industry, what other markets or industries are in play here for carbon credits, Dr. Subler?
Well, again, you've got almost every industry that's a large emitter or a large producer of greenhouse gas emissions is going to be looking probably to either invest in emission reduction projects or to buy carbon credits. You've got agriculture in the U.S. as a big player in projects that reduce emissions, both from methane coming from farms as well as nitrous oxide coming from the use of fertilizers. You've got the landfill waste management industry because landfills produce a lot of methane too, and it's not a difficult thing to put in gas collection systems on landfills. Renewable energy efficiency projects, projects that reduce the sort of leakage of refrigerants into the air, because those are powerful greenhouse gases. All of those areas have some kind of opportunity for either developing projects that reduce greenhouse gases or for purchasing carbon credits. Let's
talk about politics of this, Dr. Subler. Is it, both sides of the fence? Is it a bipartisan issue? Is everyone somewhat in support of this, or are there political issues?
Well, I think in the past it's been viewed as a partisan issue, but I think lately people are realizing that it's not just an environmentalist issue anymore. There's actually there's strong economic incentives for businesses to start to take a closer look at their greenhouse gas inventories and to start to do things that reduce emissions. So it's turned into, because of the way the carbon policy has come along, it's turned into more of a bottom line issue than a feel-good environmentalist issue. I think once people realize there's a long-term risk mitigation strategy at play and that there's an opportunity for a new revenue, a lot of major companies are recognizing that by getting into this early, taking early action, they're actually going to be more competitive in the long run than if they sit and wait for regulations to come down the road.
So, Dr. Subler, it looks like there's potential for the future, how do you project the future in carbon credits?
Well, I think people think then, within 10 or 15 years, this is likely to be $1 trillion market. And I think people are recognizing in the United States that there's a huge opportunity for those people who are willing to make decisions now about getting into it.
Well, thank you. It's a fascinating topic, Dr. Suba. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Ileana.
Until next time, for Special Edition TV, I'm Ileana Bravo.
Find Environmental Credit Corp at envcc.com or at 607-288-4020. To reach Special Edition TV, go to specialeditiontv.com.